Hey, it is Wednesday, and welcome to the live show. Today, we're going to talk about something that has been coming up, I don't know, I would say for close to 100% of my clients for the last year. It may not be the most top of mind issue for each of them, but it definitely comes up in their space, right? So, working with people who are successful, working with people who are in entrepreneurship, we tend to be driven. We tend to have some purpose that is pushing us in a direction to be in our purpose. Now, I know there are some of you in this group who are not entrepreneurs and you don't have any desire to be. I want you to continue watching if this is you, because this impacts other areas of our lives as well. We're just going to speak to how it shows up in growing success, growing as a person, and creating wealth in our lives. So, what is this issue that I'm talking about? It is our relationships. Where do you knowingly or unknowingly allow the way that you experience your relationships or your fears or stories around those relationships impact your wealth, your growth, and your success? Does it hold you back? Does it support you and move you forward? Because it looks very different for everyone. So let me just give you an example of what I mean by that. I've mentioned before when I talked about money on one of the previous episodes how family stories around money can impact us. But what about the level of acceptance, right? When we're successful, what about that level of connection when we are successful? How are our families going to hold that space for us? Not that they have to hold that space for us, but do you make decisions in your business, or do you hold back in your business because family won't understand? Maybe there's an aspect of your business where you want to travel, you want to host retreats, maybe you want to speak, and your family doesn't get it. And you hear these stories, and maybe you think, oh, well, maybe it's not for me because it doesn't feel good. But how come it doesn't feel good if it's something you really want to do? What about this doesn't feel good? It could be something underneath the surface where there is concern around how your family is going to perceive and receive you, whether or not they might criticize you for speaking, traveling, hosting retreats. Who are you to do this? Can't someone else do that? You should be at home. And I'm going to speak a lot to the perspective of women today. Just heard a new statistic. I knew it was very small, but just heard a new statistic that women only make up 2% of leadership in the world. We're 51% of the world's population, but we only make up 2% of leadership because we've grown up in a society and a lot has changed in the last 10 to 15 years. I'm 53. I think I've seen more changes in the last 10 to 15 years than I did the entire 38 years of my life, how things are shifting. But we grow up where we go to school and we're programmed that, girls behave and learn and grow and do in a certain way, and boys have different expectations, and our parents have expectations of us. I remember in high school when we graduated, I had a classmate. We were friends. We weren't best friends, but we were friends. Had a classmate, and the one thing she wanted to do more than anything else was to be a hairstylist. She loved it. She loved beauty work. And her parents told her they would not pay for her to go to school. They would not support her unless she went to nursing school, because nursing school was a good profession for a woman. Nursing school or being a teacher. So she started her path into nursing school. She hated it. She didn't like it. And she dropped out, and she ended up going to learn to be a hairstylist. But, she initially acquiesced to the demands of her parents because she wanted their approval. She needed their help. Money, financial support was attached to doing what was expected of her. And as women, we carry a lot of that. As women, we wear a lot of hats. And that's not to say that there aren't men out there who don't pitch in and do things. My husband and I, relationships are 100-100, but when it came to doing things around the house, he and I have always been 50-50. He'll help me out with things. I'll help him out with things. And we just always worked together to get things done. There was no, that's women's work, or it's the wife's responsibility to cook, or whatever those things may be. I can't remember the last time I was responsible for doing all the laundry. I might do one load a month. My husband does the laundry, right? So we have atypical, what would socially be considered atypical roles in our house. But when we look at these expectations and in the box that we've been put into through stereotypes and through expectations, when we start a business and then we begin to grow that business, underneath the surface, those things can influence our decisions. We can feel a sensation of, maybe I shouldn't push too hard. Not that I ever recommend pushing in business, but maybe I shouldn't be too assertive in my goals. That's a better word. Maybe I shouldn't be too assertive in my goals because, it just might not be a good thing. And maybe we can't put our finger on what we mean by that, but it could be the perceptions of family. It could be the perceptions of a spouse, because as we grow a business, we have to grow ourselves. Our business will not outperform who we are. If you are a professional and you want to advance in your career as a professional, you will not outperform who you are as a person. You will not outperform your identity. So we get to do this inner work. We get to explore, and this is highly unique to entrepreneurs, that if you're going to grow a business, this inner work and this unraveling of all these beliefs and stories that are kind of like hurdles, if you will, as we're running this race in business, we get to do this work to grow. So I've had clients say to me, you know what, I'm doing all this personal development work and my partner is not doing this kind of work and they don't understand. And I am afraid I am outgrowing them. I'm afraid that I'm going to expand and I'm going to be at this place and they're not going to be able to keep up. That can be really deep. There can be a lot of layers to that. But on some level, it's basically that we want that support, right? We want to feel connected and we don't want to experience loss. So in order to avoid experiencing this perceived, anticipated 98% chance it's never going to happen loss, we will limit ourselves. We don't speak our full truth. We hold back just a little bit because we might be afraid that our partner is insecure, or heck, maybe your partner is insecure about your level of success. Maybe they have an issue with you making more money than they do. Not that it's a conscious thing, but subconsciously, maybe it makes them feel inadequate. Maybe it makes them feel not good enough. And all of these things can come together and cause you to dim your light, to not be as bold or as assertive as you would like to be in your business to grow and create the success that you want, to create the generational wealth that you want. It's very real. And I spent an entire conversation with more than one client in the last few weeks addressing these relationship issues. Once we get past the I need more confidence, once we get past the imposter syndrome, then there's this deeper level of awareness. One of the things that can come up when wealth begins to accumulate, or even before the wealth begins to accumulate, that your family, your friends can perceive that, or maybe think that you have more that you do already, and expect that part of it's theirs. It was really, really intriguing as I did some research into something last summer to uncover the number. I mean, it's a really real thing where people generate and grow their wealth. And then all of a sudden, out of the woodwork comes family and friends looking for their fair share. Even though they put in none of the work, maybe they weren't there for any of the support along the way, but they want their fair share. So while most people don't disclose how they're doing financially, they're always aware that if they share how well they're doing, that now they have to deal with this other layer. And then they might be the bad guy, right? They might be the bad guy because they're not willing to support someone in the family. And I think that boundaries are important. Just as a general aside about money, I've always had a philosophy, and I learned this from my dad. Do not ever loan friends or family money unless you're willing to give them that money as a gift. That way, there's zero expectations, there's no strings attached to it. So that's a pretty easy boundary. If someone asks me for assistance, I'm like, okay, would I give this to them as a gift? And if the answer is no, then the answer is no. And it just makes it pretty easy. And then you don't have to worry about whether or not people pay that back. But if you find that you're holding yourself back, if you've worked through, fear of judgment, if your confidence is good, but you're like, no, there's still something that I'm not moving forward the way that I would like to, then explore your relationships, explore the stories there, explore what you have witnessed. Even if you don't think you believe it, explore what you witnessed growing up and see what is there that you might need to create a good story to reprogram your mind, that you might need to shift the perspective around. Because as I've mentioned, I pretty consistent about this. I harp on this. We're tribe animals. We want to be accepted. We want to belong. And our subconscious mind will do what it needs to do to avoid perceived pain from loss and disconnection and not having those relationships, even if it's really not serving us. And that can cause frustration inside of us, right? Because our soul's desire is to live our soul's desire. And when we're living in contrast to our soul's desire, we feel these frustrations, we feel disconnected, we feel unsettled, we feel like there's something more, we want to do something different. And as women, now more than ever, we are in a place where we can change this narrative. And men, if you're listening, I want you to consider the internal dialogue that successful women around you might be having. Because we just generally tend to carry, I don't want to say so much more responsibility, but we carry the ideals of so many people before us, sometimes whether we realize it or not. And we're attempting to check all these damn boxes. We're attempting to check the box of, a supportive partner, of managing the household if you don't, depending on what the dynamic is, of being a good mother, right? We're coming out of this age that women have to freaking do it all if you want to be successful. That in the 80s, that was the thing. 70s into the 80s and into the 90s. If you were going to be a successful woman, you had to freaking do it all. And it's not true anymore. We get to choose that, but we also get to look at our stories and to see where we are supported in that. So men, know that if you're listening, whether it's your partner, your mother, your sister, someone that you're doing business with, in our minds as successful women, we are working through how we can manage all of these things and make sure that they're done and that they're done well. Just something to consider, right? It's not right or wrong. It's subconscious programming. It's subconscious programming. Nobody, I don't think anyone chooses to go around in the world and carry weight. Nobody chooses to go into the world and carry a burden of thought or belief. These are things that we just pick up. They're sticky. And the reality is, for some people, as they grow and as they evolve, there can be differences in relationships, in friendships, in parents, brothers, sisters, partners. There can be differences where that divide grows so much that the compatibility isn't there anymore. And there are people in my life who do not necessarily understand what I do. They do not, for the longest time, my business, they thought it was a hobby. When I left anesthesia and I went full time, it was like, okay, when are you going back to work? When are you going back to work? Like 6 months into it, it's like, do you still have clients? What's going on? They just couldn't imagine that there were that many people who want to positively change their minds through hypnosis. And their entire context for creating income in their lives came from having a stable job. So I could not expect them to understand. So what did I do? I just accept them as they are. And I do not talk about my business with them. I don't bring it up. One, because they may be uncomfortable with it, which really isn't my problem. However, they might be uncomfortable with the whole idea, because sometimes you'll hear things like, I don't know how you do that. I could never do that. When you and I know that most people could, if they had the resources and someone to show them and teach them. Most people could, right? But I just, to avoid the whole situation, I don't need their approval. I don't need their acceptance. I love them. They are a part of my life. So I simply don't bring that into those situations. Now, if a conversation comes up and it tends to go negative, I walk away. I walk away. I say, oh, you know what? I need to go do something else. And I remove myself from that situation, right? I just remove myself from that situation. Each circumstance is going to be unique to you, of how you deal with family in that circumstance, but you can do it kindly. You can do it compassionately. And it has been my philosophy for a few years now that my business is not my family's business. right? It's none of their business. We have a familial relationship, and what happens inside of this business, other than me keeping my husband apprised of different things, um, it's no one needs to know. And let them make up whatever stories that they want. Let them just make it all up, and just don't worry yourself with it. Just let it be what it's going to be. So last week, several of you raised your hands that you would love uh, to see something around fear of judgment. I'm working on that, and I will have that coming to you. Just a quick little guide to work through fear of judgment. So if you didn't raise your hand on that video, just comment freedom below if you would like a copy of that when I get it done, and I will get it to you before I go to Sedona this weekend. All right, have a great week and chat soon.